You're reversed, Aaron. Okay, now they were just exactly like the select.
I'm Kelly Gunther for Seattle City Light, and I'm in the Ham Creek estuary in South Seattle. Now, even though I am in the middle of an industrial area, the creek and the habitat around me have been restored to its natural state with native plants that were planted by King County and Seattle City Light. By doing this, some native animal species have returned. In this program, we'll see how a family of osprey is coping with being so close to human industry. We're also going to learn how City Light is experimenting with the use of goats to clear weeds and brush from a substation in the middle of the Maple Leaf neighborhood in North Seattle. But first, we want to talk about how Seattle City Light harnesses natural forces to provide your electricity. For over 100 years now, Seattle City Light has been tapping the water high in the mountains to keep the lights on here in Seattle.
The mountains outside of Seattle accumulate a lot of snow. This snowpack, all this frozen water, has been used by the city of Seattle for over a century as a source of stored energy. As the snow melts, gravity takes over, and the water makes its way to the streams and rivers that feed the Puget Sound. Starting early in the 20th century, Seattle City Light began building dams that would harness the energy of this water speeding toward the sound. Inside the dams are turbines that are spun by this rushing water.
People have been using water to power things for centuries. Now, this is an example of a 19th century water wheel that they used to use to generate electricity a long time ago. In the 21st century, we're still using water to power things, but instead of a wooden wheel, we're using metal turbines because they last longer and they create far more energy.
Here's how they work. Water is stored behind a dam. To generate power, the water is directed through tunnels called penstocks. The penstocks bring the water to the powerhouse turbines. At the turbine, vanes called wicket gates control the water's energy and direct the water into the turbine runner's blades, causing the turbine to spin a shaft connected to a series of large magnets in the generator. These magnets are spun inside large coils of copper wire, generating electricity. This electricity is transferred from the generator to transformers, which dramatically increase the voltage and allow the electricity to be sent hundreds of miles to Seattle over transmission lines. Gorge Powerhouse on the Skagit River was one of the very first built by Seattle City Light and has been generating electricity since the 1920s. Every few decades, though, the turbines have to be replaced because they get worn down and don't generate electricity as efficiently. That's what they've been doing recently at the Gorge Powerhouse. They're replacing what they call Generator 24.
This particular one happens to be a complete turbine overhaul, where the generator had been built in the early 1950s, hasn't been touched hardly at all to 2006, and needs a complete overhaul.
While it takes an immense amount of work to do this, the efficiency of the turbine will increase greatly.
We're upgrading the machine from an 80-watt machine probably all the way up to a 100-megawatt machine, which is a huge improvement in 50 years. Technology and the building of the turbine wheels has increased so much.
Seattle City Light has been upgrading all its turbines at a cost of $64 million, but the utility will make back $112 million in increased power production over the life of the new turbines, so it's a good investment. Doing the work is both technical and time-consuming. Some workers even have to wear these moon suits with an independent air supply to do the modern upgrades. And there's another tool used here that also looks like something you'd see from astronaut training. Seattle City Light workers created it.
It's actually called a boring bar, and what that operation is for is to machine the existing surfaces in the turbine area to accommodate some of the new parts that we're going to be putting into Unit 24.
What's interesting is that the utility put the turbine overhaul out for bid, and Seattle City Light workers won the contract.
We came out about $500,000 lower than the next lowest competitor. That was competing throughout the world, even as far as China had bid on it. So all the equipment that we have at the shop we've collected through the years has allowed us to compete with the outside world.
City Light workers have been caring for these turbines on these hydro systems for a long time, so they've accumulated very specialized machining tools for nearly a century.
A lot of the parts were made back in the early 20s and no longer available, so we will reverse engineer what's broken and upgrade it and make it to today's standards in our shop. We have all the equipment and the tooling to do that and the manpower to do it.
So the city's long experience with hydro generation is now saving ratepayers quite a bit of money. And these turbines are keeping the lights on using only snowmelt and gravity to do it. In addition, these hydro projects were built above traditional salmon spawning grounds, so they're also environmentally friendly.
Seattle citizens completed their first hydro project on the Cedar River in eastern King County all the way back in 1905. And that powerhouse is still in operation. Now, a completely different construction project with a completely different purpose happened for some birds. This tall pole behind me is actually providing a safer roosting place for the osprey. These large birds had been building nests on top of city light transmission towers. The osprey family now has flown south for the winter, but Connie McDougall reports that during their breeding season, scientists paid these birds a visit.
Osprey are becoming more abundant in the lower Duwamish River of Seattle. The birds come to this area to hatch and rear their young. But because much natural habitat has long been destroyed, the birds have adapted their nesting to man-made structures. This young osprey was born in a nest on a platform atop a special pole placed by Seattle City Light a few years ago to discourage nest building on nearby power poles.
Ospreys used to nest in, or ospreys' natural substrate that they nest in, is typically snags. And as you can see, looking around here, there aren't a lot of snags remaining. The osprey always nest at the top of structures. They've essentially learned to nest on these other very stable platforms, power poles and light poles, cell towers, and other man-made structures, like I say, in the last 20 years in the Pacific Northwest.
James Kaiser is a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Geologic Survey and is studying the effects of the changed environment in the Northwest on the osprey. He works with utilities like Seattle City Light to provide nesting sites that are safe for the big birds, as well as minimizing problems associated with high-voltage electricity and potential power outages.
The nest material can interfere with the electrical components below the cross arms, causing power outages.
Of course, the danger of electrocution always exists when birds come in contact with power lines, but Kaiser is looking for another hazard to the birds: pollution. The birds started coming back to the area partly because fish stocks are improving, and the raptors need a lot of fish to feed their young nestlings, but the Duwamish also has many man-made toxic materials contaminating the fish that the osprey eat. Part of Kaiser's study is to see just what effect those toxins are having on the top of the aquatic food chain, in this case, the young ospreys. With the help of City Light line crews, he's paying a visit to the nest that is located next to a large substation. This is Kaiser's second visit to the nest. Earlier, he took one of 3 eggs in the nest for chemical evaluation.
The sample eggs represent the contaminant burdens in the female's body. So it's essentially a snapshot of the contaminant levels in her body at the time the egg was formed.
The remaining eggs hatched, and now there are 2 nestlings. Kaiser is going to capture one temporarily to further determine the health of the birds. The parent ospreys are not happy about the visit, swooping down at the bucket as it descends over 100 feet to the nest. But the birds' attacks are not enough to keep Kaiser from taking a young nestling down for some quick measurements and a blood sample.
About 40 days after the eggs have hatched is we collect a blood sample from one of the nestlings and analyze the plasma for the same series of contaminants. We also collect feather samples from the birds and analyze those feathers for mercury concentrations.
Osprey usually weigh from 2.5 to 4.5 pounds at maturity. Their wingspans 56 inches, and their claws are sharp for snatching fish from the water. This young female will probably be flying and learning to fish in a day or 2 after this exam. Northwest osprey migrate to Mexico and Central America during the winter months. This bird will make the trip late this summer and remain south for a couple of years before reaching breeding maturity and then returning to her birthplace. After Kaiser replaced the bird in her nest, she was fed by her father with a fresh English sole. I'm Connie McDougall for Seattle City Light.
Trees that damage power lines and create risk of fire. Noxious weeds on rights-of-way that harm animals. Insect pests that damage beneficial plants. Problems electric utilities have historically managed with harmful chemicals. At Seattle City Light, we've found better ways by planting or encouraging the growth of appropriate vegetation. We control harmful aphids and weeds by releasing beneficial insects to feed on them, using fewer chemicals with better results. Seattle City Light. Value for our customers, good for our community.
You might think that bringing an entire herd of goats to an urban neighborhood would cause quite a ruckus. But Peter Clark tells us that the residents of the Maple Leaf neighborhood were actually quite happy to have these four-legged weed eaters.
It had been a long time since anyone had actually seen City Light's North Substation northern boundary and fence. This rocky slope in the Maple Leaf neighborhood has been overgrown with an impenetrable thicket of blackberry bushes and other weeds and vines. No one was looking forward to the task of finding that fence until this truck showed up in late September. On board, a herd of 280 goats belonging to shepherd Greg Matson and his Healing Hooves Company. His goats were so eager to tackle the tangle of thorny brush, Matson had to drive the early diners along down the fence line so he could get the rest of the goats out of the trailer. Landscape Supervisor Betsy Searing had decided the 1 acre area in the substation was too much to handle with conventional methods.
This hillside is just so steep and so voluminous that to have a crew come in and tackle it seemed like we'd have a likelihood of some injuries. The goats didn't mind the steep slopes.
While most of us who have tried to cut back blackberries don't enjoy the job because of the thorns and brambles, Shepherd Matson says this is exactly the kind of job his herd is good at.
Oh yeah, they don't have a problem with the brambles. They'll work their way, kind of tuck their way in and slide underneath the brambles. When they're out, let them loose. They're hungry and ready to go.
Matson says the herd consists mostly of females and their young kids, with a few neutered males. The goats will normally start with the bushes they like on the lowest area, so he has to place pallets and a wire mesh to give the hungry ruminants a way to get at the bushes higher on the hill. Healing Hooves 4 days on the site cost just over $2,500 plus the cost of the safety watch. The substation is a very high voltage danger area, and by law, a non-electrical worker without proper training must have a safety watch while in the substation. Cutting back the vegetation on the hillside is important because the plants are spilling over into neighbors' property. The blackberries also provide a seed source for plants to grow on the substation gravel floor. Plant control inside the substation is critical because plants can conduct electricity and endanger workers. Having a herd of goats in the middle of an urban neighborhood was pretty unusual, and there were many curious and interested neighbors watching the goats' progress in munching through the thicket. In fact, the neighbors met with Searing a month before the herd went to work and embraced the concept, even holding a block party the day the goats arrived. Whether City Light will use the herd in the future is up in the air.
I don't think it's moving as quickly as I thought it would. This is experimental. This is new, and so we're going to give it a try. We'll probably have them come back again next spring and do some more.
In the meantime, the goats did finish the main goal of this visit, finding the fence that has been hidden for so long. City Light crews now can get up the slope safely and be able to finish clearing the area closest to the adjacent property. Peter Clark reporting for Seattle City Light.
Seattle City Light is an electric utility. So why do we encourage people to conserve? To use electricity more efficiently. Because wise energy use saves money, creates jobs, and protects the environment. City Light is Seattle's citizen-owned utility. Our customers are our shareholders, and they expect City Light to do the smart thing, the right thing, and that's conservation. Seattle City Light Conservation. Value for our customers, good for our community.
Well, that's all we have for you in this program. Be sure to visit the Seattle Channel's Video On Demand website and type in LIGHT, that's L-I-G-H-T, into the search engine. There are over 30 videos on Seattle City Light's operations, governance, and even conservation programs. I'm Kelly Gunther for your Seattle City Light.